Just our time here. This is our time in ministry coming to an end, and we thought, well, we could whimper out, or we could go out with a bit of a bang. I'm not quite sure you know how to put that on, but that's a bit better. Yeah, that's sort of, yeah, that's good. Right. Do you want to just, if you go around the back like that, and then we don't have a wire up. That's fabulous. Try that. We could. That's much better. We could have gone with a bit of a whimper, or alternatively, we could look back over our lives and our ministry with some sort of sense of what God's done. It's 52 and a bit, 52 and a half years ago that I made a decision in this church, not in this building, but in this church, to be a follower of Jesus. 52 and a half years ago, age 17. That decision wasn't to become religious. It wasn't a decision to go to church. It wasn't a decision either really to become a Christian. It was a decision that I would become a follower of Jesus. And I heard a message that said that following Jesus would radically change your life. And decided at the age of 17 that was going to be my story. So for the last 52 and a half years, I've done my best to be a follower of Jesus. To do whatever it is that Jesus told me to do when he told me to do it. We never had a plan. Our plan was never to end up being pastors of a church. Our plan was never ever to have a ministry where we would be standing in front of people. Our plan was day by day to follow Jesus wherever that took us. And shortly after becoming a Christian, age 17, Pastor Anne became a Christian as well. And you may have heard some of her story. I'd been a Christian just 3 weeks when I led my first person to Jesus. I hadn't got a clue what I was doing. I didn't understand it myself, but I knew something had changed. So 3 weeks in, I remember being in my living room at Tetney House on Scarborough Road, opposite where Kim lives, and he sends his apologies today. He's had to go up to Scotland to see his grandson play rugby, so I don't blame him for that. Once in a lifetime opportunity, so that's great. Opposite there, I remember being in our front living room and talking to my sister, Angela, about what had happened in my life, and her asking the question, well, what do I do then? And very simply, I did what I'd been taught and heard and led her in a simple prayer of salvation. And that was the start of our ministry that took us the length and breadth of the country and just doing what God told us to do when God told us to do it. The next thing that we've done. We got some photos to show you this morning. I had forgot to bring your little clip with me, so I'm going to have to do it by hand.
Oh, you want me to do the clicking?
If you like, yeah. You can pull your chair up and then you can just sit in front of me, can't you? And jump in. This was something that somebody gave me this week as a farewell gift. It says, I don't know if you read it at the back, it says, never underestimate the difference you made and the lives you have touched. Happy retirement. And to be honest, when that came, and I went, wow, absolutely fabulous. Because if you look back over our lives, we've touched the lives of many people. And although we're coming to the end of our ministry, public ministry like this, we haven't finished following Jesus. We will not go back into ministry leading a church, that's for sure. But we will continue to do whatever Jesus tells us to do when he tells us. Okay, next picture. There you go. I don't know if you see that. There's a very handsome young man there. If you can work out which one. The one on the left is me, by the way. Yeah. Yes, sir. And that is a Vulcan bomber behind me, I think, if I remember rightly. Pardon? Canberra, is it? Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. We went to look at Vulcan, so that's all right. How can you tell that's a Canberra from? Anyway, that's very good. Well done. So, yeah. So that was me. I was age 17. when that was taken, just before I became a Christian. And I was in the Combined Cadet Force at Bridlington Grammar School, and that's where I met Anne. And
I wasn't at the boys'
no,
club.
you went to the boys' school. No, she was on the minibus and very cold, so I took my jacket off and put it around my shoulders. And, that was the start. That was the start of a 52-year bit romance, wasn't it? I was still putting my shoulder go around your shoulders when you're cold, so that's fine. So yeah, and here we are. This is the Disciples. That's the band, and that's at Wansford Road, and just really that's us. If you look at my guitar, that's really amazing. We didn't have any money, so we had to make do with what we got. So in order to get my guitar to work, I took the pickup out of a record player and glued it into the inside of the guitar to act as a pickup to be able to do that. So on the left is Kim. Don't know if you recognise him, but you know, that's Kim in his younger days. Then me with the strange guitar, with my tongue stuck out. Nothing's changed, has it? And I really loved my hair. That must have been a little bit later on, because that must have been when I was just going to university. Then there's Jonathan Hoffman standing next to me, and then Mike Wilson, and in the back we have Elaine Richardson and Suzanne Davidson. Davis, yes. Mike is still going on with God up in Liverpool. Jonathan Hoffman I've just recently got back in touch with. He ended up as a doctor, a pathologist. Suzanne got married, and she's a painter, so we actually are still in touch with her quite regularly. And what did I just say then? Anyway? Elaine, I have no idea. I've totally lost touch with Elaine. Okay. Scotland. She's Scotland, is she? Oh, good. Okay. So that was us. We used to go around all the youth groups in the area, telling them about Jesus. If you look behind Jonathan Hoffman's leg on the floor, there's what we use as an amplifier. It was the speaker from a reel-to-reel projector, and we managed to borrow that and somehow or other managed to wire it up so that I got into all sorts of trouble. Kim never believed this. He used to tell me off. We used to take plugs off all the leads, because wherever we went had different plugs, so we just stuck the bare wires into the sockets, because that's the only way to do it. Kim's now an electrician, or was an electrician, so there you go. Maybe that was part of his training for how to do all that. Okay. Kim's wedding. Look at Godfrey on the left. Woo!
Godfrey the one in the light suit?
Yes.
Godfrey's the one in the light suit, yeah. And on the right hand side, Jonathan Hoffman's on the left, Godfrey, Kim, Mike Wilson, and moi. Look at that tie. Wow! Shortly after that, went to university. You know the story. Ended up in the police force, and this is me. And Anne, that's her in that beautiful fluffy coat that she's got there. My mum, as I passed out at Dishforth Police College. That's my passing out parade, all nicely dressed up. And that's me a little bit later on in the police at Bridlington, on the way to Bridlington. I did once was skinny, so there you go. So that's quite interesting. Okay, next. Do you want to say something? This is me. This is one of my favourite pictures. It really is me. It's the only photo I got, unfortunately. That's Her Majesty the Queen, Prince Philip, and she was at church while she was visiting Lord Halifax, who's the guy on the right-hand side with the red face, and she would regularly go to Lord Halifax's estate on Garrowby, bottom of Garrowby Hill, for weekends away, and then she'd visit the local church at Kirby Underdale, and my job was to stand and welcome her, and it was a bitterly cold morning, I remember, and she came out and she had a little talk with me, which was really nice afterwards, and so one of my favourite pictures of being in the police force, and just
So, I remember some of the kids' work that we were involved in. We started Yeast, but we also used to do holiday Bible clubs and children's work. This was a holiday Bible club called Light Factory, and it had a fabulous song where you said that the children were invited to come into a light factory and to meet obviously Jesus, the light of the world. So that was a bit of fun, wasn't it?
It was. We made the stages out of the inside rolls of carpets and cover them in silver foil, didn't we? To make them look like inside of a factory. Yes, we did some really strange.
Loads and loads of people helped, and
hundreds. Actually, we had hundreds of kids coming to these after-school clubs and holiday Bible clubs that we used to do in those days as part of Yeasts. Okay, next one. One of our joys was that we learnt to scuba dive, and over the years I did just over 100 dives, and Anne did slightly less. This is us in the Red Sea with all our gear on, and just had a fabulous time. On one of those trips, we were asked by somebody else on the boat. They found out that we were ministers and said, could they do their renewal of their wedding vows. So we took the boat and we anchored up on this little island in the middle of the Red Sea, and we all swam ashore, and we renewed their wedding vows in the middle of the Red Sea. It was just an unusual and quirky, but we'll do whatever God says to do when God says to do it. So whether it's children's work or finding moments when we're on holiday to be able to serve Jesus wherever we can and do whatever he tells us to do, and it's been really fabulous to do that. Okay, and the next one. And this is us in Ashington.
You don't often see us in our
No, you don't see us in our dog collars. They're really useful if we're going into hospitals or if we're doing funerals. It gets that sort of sense of, that's who we are. Authority, really. And whilst we're in Ashington, I used to be doing 2 or 3 funerals every month as a way of making a bit of extra money for ourselves. And I used to like it. I used to really enjoy doing funerals. These were not church people. These were folks that had contacted the undertakers and said, can we have somebody to do the funerals for us? So we used to take it in turns and go and visit them at their moment of need and just be with them. And we have some very strange stories of doing funerals, and some strange encounters that we had with those during those times. But really great opportunity to be with people and do whatever we could. Before that, we'd spent 5 years as part of an evangelism team. We looked high and low to try and find some pictures of the tents that we used in the Crusades meetings, but we couldn't find any of them, so we decided against that.
And this is Lee.
And this is Lee outside our church when we first got there. You can just see the sign on the right hand side. It says Miracle and Healing Meetings. We started doing there, outreach things. Eventually, those walls at the front, we decided that they were a hindrance to the church and formed a barrier between us and the church. So we knocked all those walls down, and it opened up the front of the church in an amazing way. And here we are with our South Korean interns, Joy and Hannah. They came and lived with us for a year from South Korea. They wanted. You're flashing the road. Do you know that? No?
I didn't need to.
Oh.
I didn't realise the middle thing.
Yes. So they came and lived with us for a year. They wanted to learn a bit more English. They were in South Korea, and although they were at a Christian university in South Korea, and all their exams were in English. Although they didn't really speak English, but their exams were all in English. So they came to be with us, to work with us in the church, this church here, for a year in order to be able to learn a bit better English. And they were just fabulous out. And then we had these prayer teams that came. These are all South Koreans, and they came at their own expense once a year. They get 2 weeks holiday in South Korea, that's all. and they gave 1 week of their holidays up, paid their own expenses, airfares, everything, came to come to the church with one intention, which was to pray for revival. And they slept in the church and prayed 24/7 right the way through the night in shifts to pray that God would do something miraculous here in this town. Annie, you're going to tell this story? Yeah.
Yes. I thought I would share a story with you today because we were amazed at how the gospel got to South Korea. And so I'm just going to share that story with you. It was during the end of the 18th century. There was a young Welsh pastor called Robert Jermaine. Changing the thing. Okay, Robert Jermaine Thomas. And the Koreans, when they came over in their teams, we had teams of Koreans for 5 consecutive years. And they were all really surprised that we'd never heard of Robert Jermaine Thomas. So they told us the story. And then when one of our Korean interns, Boram, was with us, she was with us for 15 months. And it just happened to be 2.5 centuries after this little pastor from Wales had gone over to Korea and been martyred, that they were celebrating in Wales, and so we took her over to find this little church that he came from, and it still had a Korean pastor there, and there was a big celebration in Cardiff of his life. He married the love of his life, and they both felt a call to go to China. Now, he was really, really good at learning languages, and so they were learning Chinese, and all of their friends thought it was really strange that they should think about going to China to take the gospel instead of staying in Wales. But that's what they really felt that God wanted them to do. So they went to China, and at that time there were hardly any missionaries over there in China, and it was a very hard and difficult country for them. And he left his wife, who was expecting their baby, in the compound with 1 or 2 other English people there, and he went into the countryside for months. And when he came back home, it was to find that his wife had died and had already been buried, and he was absolutely devastated, and it really threw his faith. And so he came out of ministry, but instead of coming home, he stayed there in China and began to work for the customs officers, because he was very good at languages. And one day, as he was in the customs office, he heard these people talking a slightly different language to Chinese, and he went after his shift finished, he found them on the pier, and they were fishermen, and they were from Korea. And Korea it was in the evening that they were there, and it was a dark sea, and they said that their country, Korea, was just as dark as the whole night looked. And he felt a real burden to go to Korea and to share the gospel with the Koreans. And so these 2 fishermen came, and they brought their little tiny rowing boat and one evening, and they took him over there to Korea, and he had some Chinese Bibles, which he had been going to be using in his ministry. And so he took some of those with him, because the majority of Koreans could speak Chinese, and some could even read. So he would be giving out these Bibles, and he gave them sort of almost secretly as he was walking through the market. Couldn't stay very long, came back to China. But then there was a Chinese trade ship that was going. It was called the General Sherman, and it was wanting to open, some Westerners were on it, and they were wanting to open trade discussions with Korea, who hated anything to do with white people. And so he was on this boat, he had some of his Bibles with him, and the leader of that area, Pyongyang, decided that it was time to attack the ship. The ship went aground and was attacked, and all of the Korean soldiers were killing all of the English people there. Robert comes off the boat, he's carrying a Bible with him, and the story goes that as he was trying to hand this Bible to one of the soldiers, the soldier cut his head off, executed him. And it would be easy to think that his life had no purpose. But what happened was that the leader of that area was wanting to collect souvenirs of his victory over all these white people, and he picked up some of these Bibles and he coated the inside of his house as though it was wallpaper with the sheets of the Bible. Go forward about 20 years, and one of the young boys who had been handed a Bible in the marketplace felt the urge. There'd been a huge regime change, and he felt the urge to buy this house. He didn't know what was inside it. He bought the house that was filled with all these words, and began reading and inviting his friends to come, and they started a church. So a few years later, when some more missionaries went to that area, they came across this building late one evening, and the young man, who was by now a young man with a family, he invited them in, and they said they wanted to talk about Jesus. And he said, well, we already know. And they just couldn't believe that these walls were covered in scriptures, and these people had been reading the scriptures and studying the scriptures. And it was the start of an amazing revival in Korea. And when Koreans look back to their faith, they see us as their mother church here in England, and that's why they give up their time to come over and to pray for us in our churches. We were about one of the only Ealing churches to have a group from the prayer mission, but there were about 50 different groups, and each of the groups had a dozen or so people in them who would come over every year, and that happened until COVID, and I think it might have started up again since. But we were really blessed by them. There was such an encouragement, and if you ever heard Koreans pray, they really go for it. They're really, really loud, and they're really enthusiastic and call upon God. And they use there's a verse in Daniel where Daniel says, "O Lord, hear. O Lord, answer. O Lord, come and..." O Lord, hear. O Lord, see your people, and O Lord, answer. And they have this phrase, Chiyo, which means O Lord, and they begin their prayer time each time saying Chiyo, Chiyo, Chiyo at the top of their voices, and then they pray for one specific thing, and then the leader will ask them to pray about another specific thing. And fantastic, amazing prayer times that we used to have in London with them, didn't we? At the big Methodist hall there that was full of a couple of thousand of them. We
even managed to get them to have a guided tour of the Houses of Parliament, and our local MP was killed a few years ago. He was stabbed to death by some guy, and he managed to get us all in to get into the Houses of Parliament. Give us a guided tour of and even managed to get us into the little chapel, which is underneath the chamber where you see the Houses of Parliament on TV, and underneath there is a chapel, and we've got the privilege of being able to go down into that chapel with our Koreans and to be able to pray for our government, and that was not quiet. by any means. I'm not quite sure the intern that was taking us around didn't quite know what to make of these Koreans shouting at the top of their voice, "Cheerio!" and really going for what God was doing. So you see, I think God calls us to do things all the time, and all we've got to do is be obedient. And it might not make sense at the time. It might not have a lot of sense to it. I joined the police because that's what God called me to do. And we've tried our hardest over the years to do whatever God was calling us to do next. And what's the next picture? Have we got a one?
Yeah, we've got some fun ones now. Just a big thank you to Josiah for reading the scriptures for us.
Because I want to embarrass him.
Oh, look, it's just off there. How do I get Josiah back on? There he is. Fascinated by George the Mouse. And the meerkat.
Well, anything to tell the kids about Jesus. I can't even remember what that was. There was a mouse and a meerkat. I have no idea what that was, but that was just a daft story we were telling. But Josiah certainly seemed to be really, I'm not sure about the dummy, but that's okay. Do you still have that, mate? The dummy? No, you don't. Oh.
You are awful. And here he is.
A little bit later on, we ran with their piano. We left that piano down in Essex. We had that in our house in Harper Street, but it really was too big for the house. So when we were in ministry, we took it all over with us. We eventually left it down in the church in Essex then to continue using. And this is what we used to do every now and again. We used to get all the kids out singing at the front just to encourage them that worship isn't just for us older people. If you're, it's all about getting youngsters to be involved in what Jesus is doing. Is that the last one? Karen, what on this?
Right. Okay. When we first came on our induction night, I mentioned the fact that my mum became a Christian just before, and this is her baptism. So she'd just been a Christian for about a year, and she was with Robert Templey down in Home on Spalding Moor, and we took a
Baptism tank, yeah.
Baptism tank down.
All the way from Essex, didn't we?
Yeah,
Probably took in the back of the car.
It's again.
We did, yes. Now, I should have thought about that because it's better water down in Essex.
And here are a couple of fun pictures. We still were involved very much in children's work. That was me at Kids Club. Some kind, I think, was that
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman.
Yeah, Wonder Woman. Yeah.
And Sausage Man.
Sausage Man.
But on a more serious note, this is actually in the Garden of Gethsemane, and we were actually praying at that moment for our ministry, for the people that we would come into contact with. And so there's a sense in which, God knew that we were going to be coming here and be part of your church, and even at that time. So prayer is so important, isn't it? And recently, as you know, we've written a book, and that's, we still get invited to go places to tell those stories. I've got one with me. If you haven't got a book and you want to buy one off us, please see me at the end. And very finally, you might have seen this in Driffield Times, and here we are.
Beginning of our ministry here in January last year. Over the years, people, we've been in ministry now, that's part of 30 odd years, actually, more, because even when we were in the police, we were still serving God with whatever we were doing. And over that time, we've seen God do some amazing things. Seen people healed, many people coming to faith. We've grown churches, we've trained young people. We had a group of, when we were in Essex, a group of teenagers that we called our young lions. Every single one of them went on to serve Jesus in some form or other. There were 6 of them, and we trained them for the best part of 2 years, and we released them into ministry. We taught them how to preach, and all of them are in full-time ministry, apart from one who is a policeman, but he's still serving God in his way I don't know why he's a policeman. I wonder where he got that idea from. In fact, he contacted me this week to ask if we could have a copy of a book that we'd written some years ago, and we just sent that over to him, Craig, and he's still going on with God, which is brilliant. I just want to finish with one story. I'm often asked about some of the stuff that we saw when we've been in ministry. And often somebody say to us, what's the biggest miracle that you've ever seen? What's the biggest thing that you've seen God do in your time in ministry? And that's a really tough one, because it's when God moves in people's lives, that's the most important thing for them at that moment in time. Might not be to outsiders, but it is to them. And when God touches somebody's life, whether it's healing them or releasing them into ministry, whether it's just a moment where God speaks to them and encourages them, that is the most important moment for them. And even it might not seem an awful lot to anybody else. And it's absolutely beautiful to be able to lead somebody to Jesus. And over the years, we've led many, many people in a prayer of salvation, sometimes in meetings, and there'll be maybe people we don't really know, and sometimes it'll be over a cup of coffee as we sit in a house or sit out somewhere with them and just talk to them about Jesus and lead them to come to a place where they know that they want to have Jesus for themselves. Because that's been the biggest part of our lives, is following Jesus has been the biggest thing that we've ever wanted to do. It's not about preaching, it's not to have a ministry, or we could have been playing music and all sorts, and that created a band and done all sorts of things like that, but we chose not to, because we didn't want to just do stuff for ourselves. We wanted to do stuff that honours Jesus in everything that we do. When we were in Essex, there was this little lady in our congregation, and she must have been in her late 70s at the time, and our heart went out to her, because for year upon year upon year she had been quite badly abused by her husband, who was really a nasty man, really very nasty man, and she was browbeaten and quite frail, but she was faithful to Jesus, and she would be there every week in our services. But you could tell that she really struggled with life. Life was really tough for her, particularly because of her husband. And we just didn't know what to do. His husband didn't want anything to do with church. Never come anywhere near church. Wasn't interested. Every time that she mentioned it to him, she would get a row at home. She would be, I think, sometimes even physically abused by her husband, and quite sad. And she rang me up one day, and she said, "Pastor, could you help me?" I said, "Of course I can help you." She said, "My husband's got to go to hospital, and we can't really afford to take a taxi. Could you take him to the hospital?" Now, I know what he was going to say. I know how anti-church he really was. And there was part of me that just sort of said to myself, I don't want to do this. Yes, of course I'll do that. Came out of my mouth. Okay, God, I don't know what you're doing about all this, but I'm going to do it. So I thought, all right, I'll just take him, and I'm just going to drop him off, and then that'll be it. Okay, so took him to the hospital, and I dropped him off, and before I knew it, I'm saying to him, "Do you want me to come and collect you when you've had your treatment?" He was going in for prostate cancer treatment. And I said, "Yeah, that's all right." "Oh, okay. I don't want to do this, God. I don't like this man. I really don't like him." So, okay. So I went and picked him up and took him back home again. And just as I'm dropping him off, I find myself saying that it is when God does stuff in your life, it's, sometimes he overrules you, I think, at times. And I found myself saying to him, "Do you want me to take you next week when you've got to go for your treatment?" And he says, "Yes, that'll be really good, thank you." Okay. And the only thing I said to him then was, "I'm praying for you." And week after week after week, for I think something like 10 or 11 weeks, I would pick him up and I'd take him to the hospital, and I'd bring him back, and I wouldn't say anything to him because I didn't know what to say to this man because I knew he was so anti-church. I just said, I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for you. He gets his treatment, and this is just before COVID starts, and didn't think anything about it. He gets his treatment. Sunday morning, she's in church, week after week after week. He gets his treatment, and at the end of the treatment, I look up one Sunday morning, and he's sitting in church at the back with his wife. And as I normally do in church, I make an appeal, a very simple appeal about asking Jesus into his life. I wasn't sure, but I thought he responded. And I went, oh, okay, that's interesting. COVID comes along, and we start to have to record services. I don't know how you did it down here, how you did it here in Driffield. Some of it was done online, so people would be able to log online a bit like we're doing here in church at the moment, and you'd be able to watch the services at home. But there were a number of people in our church that didn't have internet access because they were elderly or didn't have the wherewithal to be able to manage getting online. So we would make a DVD of the service and send that out to half a dozen people in the church every single week. Record it, edit it, drop it down onto a DVD and send it out. And we also sent out stuff to the kids' work as well. A lot of work went into that. But they didn't have a DVD player because they were quite elderly and frail. So then I started making audio CDs and would send them an audio CD. Didn't think anything about it until the end of COVID. And at the end of COVID, they're back in church, the pair of them, and he comes up to me and said, you know something, Pastor, we really appreciated your audio CDs, and every Sunday morning I would sit with my wife, and we'd take communion together as we listened to your service. His life had been transformed, not because we preached, not because I'd said encouraging words to him, but because I decided I would just take him to the hospital. And that was the thing that opened the door to his heart. So I just want to encourage you guys, whatever you do for Jesus. Colossians 3 says this, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is Christ that you are serving. He is our God, the servant King. Whatever you do it for Jesus. We might not know why or how or what the end result is at the end of the day. We will do when we get to heaven. And I long for the day when I get to glory and I sit and talk to the people who have been impacted through our life and our ministries and through the lives and ministries of people that we've made a difference to. And how many hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands will have come to know Jesus as their Lord and Saviour. Not because we're big and clever and anything else, but because we've done what Jesus told us to do at the time. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart. So whatever God's calling you to do, guys, as we go into this new season of this church, do it for Jesus. Work at it with all your heart. It's all about following him. Let him rule your heart, direct your paths, and he will convict of sin and unrighteousness. It's not our preaching. I think when we preach on a Sunday morning, I reckon by Wednesday you'll have forgotten anything that we'll have said in our sermons. But it's not about that. It's about allowing the Holy Spirit to move. And God can use you just as much as he's used us. And I know that as we step into this period of retirement for us, that God's not finished with us yet. It might not be leading a church, but it will be something, somewhere, somehow. Don't know what it is. We're just going to wait to see. And our prayer is that you will start to realise that God can use you For those of you that are bringing friends on to the party on Tuesday, fabulous, well done, thank you for that. If you're just coming on your own, brilliant, we're looking forward to seeing you. And Mark Greenwood's going to be doing his Christmas show, but it's full of Jesus. And it'll be light-hearted, and but it'll make you think, and it'll make your friends think about it as well. So just encourage you to just to go with that. If you're not told as you come in, please do so, because I need to know that Rachel knows how much food to make for that. So, Keith, you wanted to say something?